Hey, welcome to Wine Talks with Paul K. And we are in studio today in beautiful Southern California, about to have a conversation with Monique Soltani. Where are you then?
Where am I currently sitting, or
No,
where am I on the map?
yeah, on the map.
I'm in San Diego,
Oh, in
California
San Diego, right?
currently.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Wine Talks available on iHeartRadio, Pandora, wherever you hang out for your podcasting, and sponsored by the Original Wine of the Month Club, now sporting the Napa and Sweet series of wines. Hey, have a listen to Timothy Hebrach. His father was one of the family members of Cheval Blanc, and that is coming out today. It's a great conversation with a young man who's starting his career in Bordeaux, at one of the great histories of Bordeaux, and now he's at Chateau Trianon, which is his father's new property. But it's a really fascinating conversation. Have a listen. But not why we're here today. We're here to talk to Monique Soltani down in San Diego. She is an award-winning journalist, double major in broadcast journalism, has a show called Wino TV, experienced wine judge, founded Think Media in 2012, which is part of Wino TV, and many, many, many other accolades. Welcome to the show.
Oh, it's such an honor for me to be here, Paul. I was looking you up and thinking, gosh, you should be on my show. I have
Well,
so many questions for you.
we can do that too. No problem. I
Yeah.
love to do it. Well,
Hopefully with a
it's
lot of wine in front of us. Yeah.
it actually is kind of fun that we can cross paths, because I've been doing this for 32 years. You've been in it for 20 years. I mean, it's and we've never met each other. We, thanks to social media, we've been able to cross paths and have this conversation. So many interesting stories to tell about what you've been doing in your career, which is kind of interesting because you are a journalist by trade.
Yeah, absolutely. So I went to school for broadcast journalism. I got my first TV news job in good old Pocatello, Idaho. So I moved from Los Angeles, where I grew up, to the thriving metropolis of Pocatello. And I really got my journalism chops there. I started out as a course and crime reporter, spent the night in a local jail, did all that sort of early Deborah Norville stuff. And then I was the morning show anchor there. And I think when I became the morning show anchor, I really developed my passion for these sort of more lifestyle interviews, because I remember I had chefs on, and we just did a lot
Mm-hmm.
of, like, we did fitness things. We did more news of the day stuff in the A block and the D block, which would be like hard news. But then we did all these fun featurey stuff, and that sort of got me thinking, maybe a little bit more suited for my personality would to do more lifestyle type stuff.
Yeah,
So,
it's a interesting trek, because I want to peel that back just a little further.
oh, do you?
I had a friend on. He came in not too long ago. He used to be the anchor in Billings, Montana, and then he came to Channel 11 in Los Angeles, became a
I
producer.
might know him. What
Yeah.
year was he in Billings? Because we had a lot of folks from Billings and
Well, we're
Pocatello.
probably the same generation. His name was
Yeah. Oh,
Stephen
now
Yonke.
we're a different generation, huh, Paul? God, I got
Well, no.
old fast.
So,
The
but it's
boomers. Oh, great. Someone
is it?
asked me if I was a boomer recently, and I was like, I don't know. I thought my mom was, but okay.
Well, I am. I know that, but is that has the way it has to go? Is that you have to start in a small market like, man, what'd you say, Pocatello, Idaho? I mean, is that the way it
Well,
works? And
you
that's the
got
only
to
way.
remember, Paul, I probably, like your friend in Billings, started before the internet. So to say if that's how it has to go, that's the way it went back then. I grew up in Los Angeles. It's a union market. You can't get your chops. You can't work in a, on camera. At that time, as an intern or anything, you couldn't really learn what you needed to learn. They'd say, um, make your mistakes or whatever. In a small market, there was no internet. So you'd go to these, I mean, there was, but not like we see today. There was certainly no social media. You'd
Hmm.
go to these small markets, you'd learn how to be a reporter. You'd know how you meet the community, you learn how to tell these compelling stories. And in markets like Pocatello, in these smaller markets, I actually get chills. The news is such an important part of the community, especially at that time, because they weren't able to get, sort of information in the same way we can get it now. So I took that job very seriously, and I learned a lot about a small town. I also learned a lot about myself. Having grown up in Los Angeles, I never had this sort of connection to community in this way that was just so meaningful and powerful. So I look back at my time in Pocatello as one of the most meaningful times of my career. In terms of of nowadays, I mean, look, anybody, you can make a name for yourself all kinds of ways, whether you want to be on television or be on YouTube. In terms of journalism, there's all this sort of self-journalism happening. And so I think that the entry now is very different than when I started. And I think if you have something that you're driven and passionate about, you're going to be successful at it. If you keep at it, no matter which route gets you there.
It's so interesting because I would think there's some kind of, I'm not going to say resentment, but I just said it, but some kind of sort of, wow, there's these kids that are on, TikTok, and all of a sudden they're famous journalists, or they've got this, they get wealth, or they get whatever, they get this notoriety out of something that wasn't even on their radar, 3 days ago kind of thing. And here you are, any journalist that started out in their career in a small market, working hard, working their way up, become the anchor, get to the bigger markets. It's kind of like American Idol, right? I mean, all these singers that are working their tails off to get notoriety, and then somebody comes in through a TV show and becomes famous.
I guess it depends on what your goal is. My goal was never to be famous. I mean, I grew up in Hollywood, remember? So I guess to say my goal was never to be famous is inaccurate. My first time on television, I was 5 years old, and I was on the John Davidson show. And I was picked out of all these kids in all the elementary schools across the country, and they picked a couple kindergartners from the whole country. And I went to Grant Elementary in Hollywood, California.
Wow.
And I got picked, and I was on national television. And I was interviewed by this person, and Linda Carter was also on the show. And I think at that moment in my life, I thought, TV was very magical, but there was like, you could talk to people, you could connect. And I grew up in I didn't have a glamorous life growing up in that way. So to me, it was maybe an equalizer in a lot of ways. Like, you could have a voice if you were on television. So when I got into working in journalism, it was less about being famous and more about giving people a voice and telling stories about people that matter. Now my through line is wine, but my intention is still the same. If that makes sense.
Are you a chic?
A chic?
A Hollywood high chic?
Oh gosh, I grew up really poor, so no.
No, I mean
Is
chic.
Something famous?
No.
Like, I don't know what that means.
No, that's very funny. No, the chic is the mascot of Hollywood High.
Oh no! Do you know what? I wished we would have got to go to Hollywood High, because I remember when I used to be in theater, Hollywood High had all the good production budgets, but we ended up moving to the Valley.
Oh, I'm
and
sorry.
I went to Verdugo Hills High School, and we had nothing, and we were not chics. But I did place in the Shakespeare Festival at one point, one of the first people from Verdugo Hills. So I was not fancy in Hollywood High, although I don't know if it's fancy now. It certainly was no Beverly Hills 90210. Don't get me wrong.
Hollywood High was, it's Hollywood, of course, the center of film and TV in America, but still Hollywood High is a public high school, and they're still, which is amazing to me, they still call them the Sheiks, which, you think in today's, woke culture that, oh my gosh, you can't call them the Sheiks.
Well, Paul, when you said the Sheiks, I thought it must have been a reality show. I haven't watched regular television in 2 years. So I was like, oh, there must be some show called Hollywood High, the Sheiks, and they're famous with all this money. I don't know. So I made an assumption.
My mother went there. She passed
great.
a couple years ago. I tease her all the time. In fact, sometimes I didn't have a chance to look up where you went, because what was the Verdugo High mascot?
Oh, let's be clear. I don't publish that kind of information.
That's information we don't talk about. Yeah, okay.
Well, no, I'm joking. I'm telling you
of
now.
course.
It's not a secret, but it's not something we were the Dons, DON, the Verdugo Dons.
I know this.
Well, the campus was so beautiful that we filmed 90210. I bring this up again because it was when I was in high school, such a popular show.
Yeah.
But they filmed 90210 at our high school until it became so famous that they had to go to a studio or whatever. But the cast would film at our high school. Yeah, it was it was a beautiful campus, and I had wonderful teachers. So it was a good time in my life.
I look it up because it's kind of fun and it's kind of an icebreaker. And I had started the conversation with Mike Soltani at Opus with, so you're a Mustang, which he went to Gilroy High. And it opened this conversation about, his youth, which was really fun to hear, because he goes, I grew up smelling garlic and cow manure, so that's how I refined my...
I interviewed Michael so many years ago. I think it might have been a decade ago now. What a wonderful gentleman he
really
is.
Nice guy,
so, yeah.
So you were doing this in Pocatello, and you were interviewing. It says you were doing some chefs and you've had quite an A-list of celebrities like Jennifer Lawrence and Nicole Kidman and Kate Hudson on the show. Is that where the sort of affinity for food and wine started, or was it?
No.
Post?
not to cut you off. So after Pocatello, after I was on the air during 9/11, and after that happened, I sort of got this, I don't know, thing in my stomach that maybe news wasn't in my blood. And
Hmm.
you got to remember, it was a small town and I was in my early 20s, and the town was scared and they looked to us for answers. And for me, being a young girl in my 20s,
Yeah.
not girl, I shouldn't say that. It had nothing to do with my gender. It just had to do with me, my soul. I was also scared, and I didn't know that I could be the right journalist to take myself out of a situation when I felt so personally impacted by it.
Wow.
So that sort of got me on the, it's not that I left my job then or anything. That just started thinking, is news in my blood? Is this what I was meant to do? Can I disassociate my own self? Again, it's a long time ago. People are different now, and the way people produce news is different. But could I be the person I needed to be for the audience? And still be the person I needed to be for myself. So about a year later, I ended up just like randomly moving to New York. This is completely insane. And I rarely tell this story, but I did tell it in the Forbes article. So I'll tell it to you. I quit. I moved in, I walked into a steakhouse in Midtown Manhattan, and I applied for a job as a waitress. And I always wanted to live in New York. And there I was, and I didn't know anything about wine. And what I realized, like I mentioned earlier, I didn't grow up in this sort of flashy life or anything like that. So what I realized very early on in this powerful steakhouse with these powerful people at that time, 2002 to 2004, it was really the heyday of Wall Street. It was post 9/11. The city was roaring back. And I realized if I could talk about wine, I could have a seat at their table. And it really made me feel empowered as a young woman. And I started learning more about wine. Flash forward to, and then I took some of the testing with the Quartermaster Psalms and all that. Flash forward a couple of years, I moved back to LA. I booked a talk show in San Diego, and then I realized, okay, I could do lifestyle content. Then I got a job offer to work at the NBC affiliate in Fresno. They were starting a brand new talk show with 6 segments a day. It was a live talk show, and I said, wait a second, I have this idea about wine. Why don't I do a wine show, a segment as a part of it? And they said, if you can get it sponsored, you can do it. And I was like, well, I can get anything sponsored. I didn't get any money, but I know how local news works. So we started a segment. It was called Wine. Oh, like, oh, I drink too much. And oh, I didn't know that. It was sort of an educational thing. And so then I got a job to work at CBS in San Francisco in 2009. It was a post recession. I thought I'd still be doing this sort of lifestyle fun stuff, and I found myself back in a newsroom again. And I really wanted to continue doing the wine thing, but there was no budget in local news at the time. So I started creating content on the side by myself and selling it out to different outlets. And now here we are today.
Wow. That okay.
Did I say that quickly enough?
Yeah, the interview's over. Thanks for coming.
You're welcome. I mean, you can dive in. I just want to get you like where we are. There's a lot more in there. We could go deeper wherever you need to go.
I do want to go back to Manhattan.
Oh, okay.
Because I have a daughter that lived there. She was a boulangère. Her restaurant earned a Michelin star, and
Okay.
so we're very familiar with the culture and the lifestyle there. Though it's changed in the last couple of years, but you just signed on as a waitress, which is a huge dramatically different change. You're in a different environment. You're in Pocatello, Idaho, and then you end up in one of the most congested walled-in cities in America. Slinging hash, as they would say, right? So, what does it mean you earned a seat at the table when you started to study wine? I'm not sure I follow
You
that.
don't know, of course. I have a feeling you wouldn't understand, but I think if you have any women listeners in your audience that were young, they might. At that time, you got to remember 2002 to 2004, it was just a different world, and there wasn't a way to get knowledge in this way. When I say a seat at the table, I mean I was treated in a way as a young woman working in a steakhouse might be treated by men who work on Wall Street. And I think I earned their respect by learning about wine,
So,
to say
what
that
did you
in
do?
the
I mean,
nicest way possible.
you took a couple courses in the court of
No, I mean, what did
sommeliers.
I
You read.
do? I mean, I'm saying at that time, like I tasted all the wines.
Yeah.
I was working in. I mean, we were in a high end steakhouse. We had one of the like a wine list like a Bible. So I definitely. I mean, you get. Have you ever worked in the restaurant industry?
I was a line cook. Yes.
Okay, well, you get a ton of wine education when you're working at one of the top steakhouses in the United States. So there was a ton of education there, and
Sure.
certainly I didn't have to learn a lot about it, but I chose to because I found it really empowering. Like I said, I mean, rarely was a wine list handed to me, or rarely did anybody ask my opinion about a drink or what I wanted to order or any of those types of things. And so when men would come to the table and ask about wine, I could have a conversation with them, and they could in some ways earn their respect, or maybe get more respect for myself. I'm not sure, but I did find it very empowering. And I thought it was at that time very geared towards men. And I thought with my show, we could gear it more towards women. I The world has changed in 20 years, and we're all able to sort of get our information in different ways, and people are not at a loss for finding knowledge about wine right now. But at that time, I mean, you could interview 10 women of my age who lived in or worked in the hospitality industry, and you probably have a similar story, whether or not they had a TV background or not.
Do you
So,
think those headwinds have changed? I mean, you
oh,
said 20 years has passed, but
100%.
you
I
think it's
just
that much
think they
different?
have, of course. Like with anything, when you ask me about how did I get my start in television, it's like, well, yeah, the way I started was different. And the world has changed dramatically in the past 20 years with the advent of social media, of course, the internet, all of it. Um, but so yeah, so then when I moved to LA, I started studying with the Court of Master Psalms. I really dug in. I was reading all the, like all the wine Bibles. It's just really because ultimately then I really wanted to do the show. So then I was like, it was not about, it evolved. I'm like, I really want to do a show about wine and I need to learn more. And so, that was in 2002. Now, over the course of 20 years, you learn and learn and learn and learn. But I'm still learning. I mean, you could ask me a question right now. I don't know the answer to anything because mainly is what I think because mainly I'm interviewing people, right? And
Right.
so I spend a lot more time talking to folks and I taste a lot of wines, but that's not what it's about for me. I mean, wine's the thing that brings the people together. I'm not dissecting or selling wine. I'm more interested in community and people.
I can tell you that the 200 episodes of this podcast has taught me more about wine and culture than the 32 years of tasting, every Tuesday. It's just, I think it's just being able to have these conversations will teach you to learn. And as you just said, in the wine business, you never stop learning. Things change all the time. I had a master sommelier here, easy for you to say, Emmanuel Kamiji, and he's been on the show 3 times actually. But one of his most poignant comments is, he says, when I got my master som, which was 1996, you didn't have to learn about, Lithuania or Croatia or even parts of South America. Those weren't regions of wine that were concerned to the wine public. Now you have to learn about those other places and more. So we're always learning something, right? There's always something new for us to take on. Do you think that then this awareness of women in wine, because it's a hot subject right now, and not only the women in wine, but minorities in wine, people of color, Asian Americans. I had Dr. Clinton on here, Clinton Lee on the Asian Pacific Wine and Spirits Institute. Do you think that the barriers are dropping more currently than they were back when you were trying to do this?
Uh, I think that we're evolving as a society in the right direction. I can't speak for, it's complicated, right? So this year on my show, I've been actively, and I always have with my show, okay, actively looking for a variety of voices and people. Sometimes you get what you get, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're just trying to create a show and you're under a deadline and you're like, I need this, and you don't get it or you want it or whatever, and it doesn't happen. Um, I think that it's a difficult topic to discuss and also for me to answer. I think in the terms of women, yes, I think that women have a greater seat at the table now than they have certainly in my lifetime. I'm not, but I'm not a boomer, so talk to my mom. I
Yeah,
don't
right.
know. I think like I don't ever, when so here's okay. I'll just give you a perfect example. When I'm doing it, this is like maybe I'm too. I don't want to have some crazy moment on here where I'm just too casual, but a perfect example for me would be when I am working on a production for my show and we're going back and forth because I produce everything and I'm working with people to help me with regions to get it going, and I say I need some variety of voices, and they tell me they have women for me to interview. I no longer believe that's a variety of voices.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that tell me about where we're
Mm-hmm.
at as a
Mm-hmm.
society? 20 years ago, if you said to me, they said I have 5 women, I'd be like, great. Or one woman, I'd be like, awesome. Now when they go, what, you have 3 women? I go, no, that's not enough. Like I need a variety of all kinds of different voices. So what does that tell me about where women are? I
Hmm.
believe, of course, women have evolved in this way, but I also think what's happened with COVID the past 2 years has really put caregivers in a difficult role, and most of the caregiving, at least in my experience and most of the people that I know, tends to fall on women more in a disproportionate place. So a lot of women had to leave the workforce. Things happen, life, in my own personal thing, I had to stop working. So, things happen, but I think in general, we're moving in the right direction and there's work to do. When you know better, you do better. And the more we know, the better we'll do, hopefully.
That's an interesting point. I asked this question, I mean, I'm looking for sincere, sort of opinions of this because I'm not sure I have one. My daughter, she works for Apple, and her job right now is in HR is to bring women back to the workforce that left it during COVID or other
Oh,
previous careers to have children, whatever. And so she reaches out in the tech side, and this is the real high tech side of Apple. But it's really interesting what the amount of work it takes to reach out and make those things happen. And I'm wondering, because one of the first women I know in this industry is Joanne Dupuis, and I've brought this up on the show before. She was the young woman at the time that took Steven Spurrier around Napa Valley to find, the Abbey Road. I mean, Abbey Road, Free Market Abbey,
oh, wouldn't
and
that be nice?
yeah, Warren Winiarski's Stag's Leap and the Chateau Montelena. So, and she was the first woman to address the Napa Valley Vintners Association. And so, talk about the good old boy network back in the day. Clearly, that was the case. But I wonder if it's just because there were too many headwinds. Like, there was sexism at that point.
There's still sexism.
Yeah,
Let's not pretend like there isn't. I mean, like it just is. I
just the
mean,
way it is. Okay, I get
it
it.
just, I mean, I don't know. Go on. Not like what it was. It wasn't so blatant. Now it's just, I don't know. You can't pretend, like, I don't know. Go on. Finish your point. I didn't
Well,
mean to cut you off. I'm speaking for all women now, Paul. Watch
I
out.
appreciate that. That's what we're here for. We got to make some controversy.
Here
Yeah,
comes,
so
here comes. I didn't know this was a controversial show. I would have had like my hair and makeup done. I just came from the gym. I'd be like with my armor on, Paul.
let's,
I thought this was going to be loosey goosey.
maybe I should. Maybe that was by design, right? I sort of keep you grounded on
Yes,
this.
you did. You believe you can't break me, Paul. Please, if I haven't been broken by now, it ain't happening.
It is
I'm
a
joking.
good thing, and the awareness is great. And look, everybody knows that women have better palates than men anyway, and I've had a lot of women on this show that have done things, and I brought this up with the SOM at the one market in San Francisco yesterday.
Sure.
There was a young woman. Her name is Ayla, and she makes wine from flowers in Oakland. And so we were
Okay.
talking about this career, but she had the funniest comment. The young girl said, I encountered racism because she's a young black woman. I encountered sexism because she's a woman, and I encountered grape supremacy, which I'd never heard before. But because she'd walk into a wine shop or a restaurant and say, I have wine made from flowers, and they're like, no, we don't want wine from flowers. We want wine made from grapes. And so she called it grape supremacy, which I thought was an hilarious comment to make.
Huh.
It's really cute. But actually, what I was telling the young woman yesterday was I was more impressed with the fact that this young girl was able to get the TTB and the ABC to license a 40-foot shipping container in the parking lot in Oakland as a winery,
Yeah.
because that is really a
Incredible.
huge task to get
Sure.
them to buy off on that. You just to come up with an address. So tell me about then Wino TV. Who watches it? Where's it shown? How
Good
many episodes you
question.
putting?
Oh, you do ask the hard hitting questions, Paul. Look, so we launched in 2012 in the format, and we were at one point. We were so early on. We were on Hulu. We were at Amazon Prime Video, the
Wow.
first on there, Roku, embedded in all smart TVs that came out, and airing across the state of California on Comcast as a half-hour show. So I took an idea, which was in my head, and we turned it into something really amazing. I was on a 25-episode deal to shoot all throughout Europe in 2018 when I got the call that my husband had stage 4 colon cancer.
Wow.
He was home with our 2.5-year-old twins. I immediately stopped production. I put myself on hold, if you will, or whatever we needed to do to take care of my family and
Wow.
my husband. My husband passed away in July 2019. I was going to take the rest of that year and then to get my then 4-year-old daughters and myself back mentally in shape, whatever that
Wow.
looked like. Um, I obviously wasn't creating content in that time. I mean, very little to, I couldn't keep up with the pace. Obviously, I wasn't in Europe and I wasn't doing any of the things that I had committed to do. And 2020 happened, and we all know what happened there. So 2020,
Wow.
okay. So then I have
What a few years you've had.
yeah, so like I said, you can't break me. It's coming
Yeah.
back from the ashes, Paul. I just pull it up like a sphinx.
Darn it.
And so stayed locked in the house with the kids for all the time. And at the end of 2021, I said, well, and Omni's surge and everybody's like, stay in your house again. I go, oh my God, I've been in my house too long. I need to find community and find a way to bring us back. So 2022 was my first year of production back, and I was pretty specific in what kind of content I was going to create and where I was going to go. I'd never worked as a single parent, my first time working since my husband passed away, and I also moved our family to Southern California to just get my head on straight and really just get out of the fray of San Francisco. At that time, it was a really difficult place to be. And so it came back this year. We're shooting in a little bit of a different format. I put an announcement, hey, who wants to work? Who wants to bring back the show? Obviously, we still have the digital platforms, but we're not on the legacy TV again. I don't doubt for 1 second we won't be able to. If I could do it then, I could do it now. I think we're doing a better show than we've ever done. I have a different feeling about the show. When Mark got sick, my show felt very small. I'm just talking about wine. It didn't feel that it mattered. And I took care of my husband to the day he died in our home. So when you're a caregiver to that level, everything else feels very small. And so
Wow.
for me to try to find something that felt like it was my purpose, after I was very clear my purpose was to be there for my husband and be there
Of
for my
course.
daughters. And so but post COVID or whatever, I was sort of a little bit, I don't know what post COVID means because I don't know when it ends and begins it anymore. But when I was thinking about this new world we live in, Mark died before this world began, right? We're in a whole new world. We're all looking at the world differently. Everybody's coming back from something. And I'm not unique. I am in the fact that my husband died at 47 of colon cancer, leaving me with, 4-year-old twins. But I'm not unique in coming back from something. We've all
Mm-hmm.
been through something. The whole world is united with almost a communal grief, if you will, coming back from, I don't know, mourning the life that we thought we had. And so I really have the drive now for the show to bring people together. And how do we come together? We come together with, like I say, breaking bread, opening up a bottle, and connecting through culture. So the through line of my show is community and coming together. And we're going to different wine regions doing that. So, I have, not to make it too big, but that it wasn't that before, right? I mean, you saw how it evolved and how I started maybe educating with women and like these sorts of things. And now it's become really my, the greatest purpose of my life outside of my children and myself, right? Like I really believe in this idea of community and bringing people together and how we come together. And so I hope you guys like it.
Well, that's
Working
no,
really hard on it.
that's fascinating because that was one of the questions I just wrote here ad hoc was, yeah, boy, so much has changed. I can just tell you from the retail side and the internet side of sales of wine has completely changed. I mean, COVID was incredible for us, and boy, all the prognostications about where those people are going to end up after confinement was over, none of it was true. That we don't know where they're hanging out, and it sounds like now the subject matter and the production of your show has shifted gears completely because of the post-COVID world. And
It's more
it's
because of me. Like I feel if I'm going to leave my house and I'm going to leave my daughters with a babysitter, like I left them with my husband before. Like they had,
mm-hmm.
I started traveling when my daughters were 8 months old, but they, I don't regret it now. Of course, as a mom, you always feel guilty, but now I know my husband had this wonderful time with their daughters alone without me there, right?
Wow.
But I look at it now, like if I'm going to leave my house, if I'm going to leave my family, if I'm going to do this, it's got to matter. Like it needs to be a little bit more meaningful. But the show is fun. It's light. It's, I looked to data that I had from the YouTube channel and the rest of the questions I've been asked the past decade about wine, and I'm trying to answer these questions. So in the show, it's shot in a half-hour format, which is essentially 3 segments, broken down to 22 minutes, and we answer 3 essential questions, and these are questions that people want to know the answer to if they go to the region or if they're at home. And the first question would be, if we're at a specific wine in a specific region, what is it there to drink? Meaning, what is the region known for? Where are we geographically on the map? If I go to this region, yes, of course, there's a million grapes, but what is it known for? So you answer that question. We do the wine 101, if you will. And then what is there to eat? So is there some sort of like food that is unique to the region? So if I'm in Umbria, where maybe we're doing truffle hunting, we're creating recipes that are unique to Umbria. But if there is no sort of their little quintessential dish, then we're going to do like, who are the chefs, what's the restaurant, some emerging voices. We're going to do a food and wine pair. We're going to do those types of culinary questions. And then what is there to do? So in terms of like activity, is that whether I'm ziplining in Paso Robles or doing some sort of like medieval times almost experience in Umbria, we're getting to action adventure, like what is there to do besides wine, and then also that cultural connection. So if there's no big thing to do, like in Walla Walla, I'm paddleboarding. Why am I paddleboarding in Walla Walla? Well, Walla Walla means many waters. It's like surrounded by water, right? So you want to bring in the regional aspect of it as well. Of course, wine is always the through line. Of course, I'm interviewing, major players, whether it's Jerry Lohr or Gary Eberle in Paso, or, essentially the father of Sagrantino in Umbria. I'm doing these in my mind because those are the ones I'm in post-production on right now. But I just got back from Lodi and we did a whole grape harvest there. So that's the point of the show this year. But you got to remember, it's me doing it, like everything. I've got one videographer, and so it's not going to be like I have a $250,000 budget. This is not what this is. Right. I'd like it to be, but we're doing the best work we can with what we have, and I hope it translates to the audience.
That's you just way. I remember now how I found you, so to speak, because you are having lunch or something with Monsieur. Well, I can't say Monsieur, that's French. Valentino Valentini.
Yes! Right! This is how good old Valentino Valentini.
I mean, he's the guy should have been a movie star, right, with that name.
I mean, oh my God, he's everything. He drove to Del Mar on a holiday weekend to meet me at El Fornillo. I mean, this guy, I'm in love with him. I mean, who does that? It's a long drive. So yeah, good old Valentino Valentini, who I met in Umbria.
Great guy. The mayor of
he was the mayor, right? Yeah. So that's how we got connected, and I did that in May. So yeah, he was great, and that's, I guess, how we found each other. So how do you know him?
He's been in here a couple times. He's been on the show. We had some of his Boccali wine here for a while. I do have a sort of in a luxurious position when it comes to the guests, because the LA market's a huge market for wine, obviously, and there's always somebody in town. I just had Clovis Tétanger on the show recently. It's very easy. It's funny because if you read about podcasting, the hardest thing is guests and getting somebody some credibility, but it's really not a problem here.
Well, especially if you got all that wine you're opening up for him behind you. I'm so jealous I'm not in studio. I have to be honest.
Next time.
For sure.
The show, though, it sounds like it's kind of the Huell Hauser of wine. If you remember him, maybe you're too young.
I don't. I was like, Doogie Howser? Wait, who?
No, I'm pretty Huell. I can't remember. I'm sure it's Huell. Anyway, he was a local sort of adventurer. He'd on these little voyages. It exposed most of the Southern California things to do, and he was very colloquial, very conversational guy. It was a really good show. Huell Hauser. Steven, you know?
You gotta remember, my background's in local news, so I got a little hokey pokey stuff in me too. Like there's something I just really love about that, like 7:00 p.m. local news sort of, local television, feel good content. So yeah, the show is, if it feels like that, it's because that's just sort of indicative of how I know story and how I know I grew up in broadcasting. So the way I tell stories might have that local news or local feel to it. And in terms of a home, I think it would be best suited, obviously online and digital platforms, of course, but it would also be that, sort of locally produced content that you would find up and down the state of California. If you're looking for gas tank getaways, going up to Mendocino, Paso Robles, going to Lodi. I mean, that's the kind of content you want to watch while you're making dinner or whatever in your house. So it doesn't give you stress. It doesn't make you, you just want to, a little bit, you can maybe making dinner while you're doing it, hopefully learn a little bit, have some fun, and that's where I see the show living. I see it living on local television, either up and down the state or across the country.
And you just
slot.
You just explained to your audience. I was thinking, since you're answering questions that you've had over the years from customers, and they're very similar to the questions we get. You're looking to disseminate some basic information on wine and food and location. You're not talking to the scarecrow collector or the screaming eagle collector. You're talking to the person that, I'd like to learn more about wine and understand it, and what are these terms they're using, that kind of thing.
It started out really like that. You know what I mean? It started almost like people would say to me now, if they watch an old video from 12 years ago, why are you so dumb? Because people like to say mean things sometimes. Why are you so dumb? Why do you ask such dumb questions?
I haven't gotten that question. Thank goodness.
I like to tell them that video is 10 years old, and I'm not asking dumb questions. I'm evolving with the audience. 10 years ago, the audience didn't know as much as the audience knows now. I think that the Screaming Eagle collector does watch my show. I mean, it just depends.
Yeah.
We're talking to everyone, but we're not dumbing it down. I'm not dumbing it down. I think that someone who is a lover of wine will love the show. I think someone who's a lover of just travel, adventure will love the show. I mean, I sometimes think, and then someone who is, I don't know, looking for something inspiration. I feel like there's an inspirational, aspirational component to it, just for my own self, because I've come back from the ashes. I didn't think I'd be able to ever get back up again. So I feel like the show is, at least for me, this like Eat, Pray, Loves meets Daenerys Targaryen. If you're familiar with Game of Thrones, it's like, okay, we're doing this adventure, and it's like, and I'm also putting myself in situations I would never do. I have a fear. I'm a scared person. I did zip lining. That was terrifying for me. I'm doing, like, this guy in Lodi asked me to climb the barrels. Like, I was so scared. And I go, Monique, like, you're here to, like, just do it. So I'm putting myself in situations I would never put myself in before. Now, are those scary to you? Maybe not, but they might be to somebody. They certainly are to me. So there's a little bit of the, facing your fears. There's a little bit of living your best life. There's a little, it's this kind of a little bit of all of that, at least in myself as the host. That's how I feel inside. The guests are the guests, and they're going to speak for themselves because they're incredible. And I'm honored that they even want to be on the show, especially we've been off the air for, several years now. So,
well, if you want something scary and you happen to be traveling and this is a very pertinent TikTok trending thing, and that is sitting on one of those slingshots.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
I don't
have time for TikTok. What are they doing?
Well, I mean, it's like you were did a zip line, right?
Yeah, it was very
like
scary.
a zip line on steroids, because you get pulled down by a slingshot, and then they launches you, and you're of course strapped in. But it looks terrifying.
I don't need to do
if
that.
you want to be terrified.
Do not challenge me, okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
No, they asked me in Umbria if I wanted to do a hot air balloon ride at 6 a.m. and I was like,
no, I don't think so.
No.
Yeah, I don't think that.
I use the 6 a.m. call time as the reason, but again, I'm not skydiving out of any, I'm a single parent to twins. Okay, I'm not that crazy. To me, the zip line was pretty adventurous, but no, I am putting myself in situations that are a little more.
That's funny.
Uncomfortable for outside of my comfort zone, if you will.
How is the production value changed in just those 10 years or so that you were doing this? Is it, you've got 6K cameras now, and you've got all kinds of, remote sound features, and,
No, we have none of that. First of all, no. Okay,
no, we're not doing that right now.
Okay, look, I grew up in local news, so I can shoot, write, produce, and edit and host everything.
Good,
this is
funny.
my background, right? So a majority of the content that you saw the first few years of the show, I did everything myself. I booked the guests, I sold the show, I did the sponsors, I did edit, reach out, everything. Okay. This year, when I came back with a new sense of purpose, I needed to be surrounded by a team. And one of the things I've learned just through the course of my husband's background in business and speaking with a lot of friends that he has is, really you need a team. It's all about the team. And so I've been, I think maybe not resistant, but it costs money, and there's a lot that goes into hiring a team. So right now I'm super lucky. I'm working with Michael Horn. He's the director of photography at NBC Bay Area, and it works for NBC National, doing amazing work. He's got every award under the sun that you can imagine for videography. So I'm honored that he wants to take on the show and work with me this year. In terms of post-production, we outsourced a house, Anaconda Productions, out of Los Angeles. I'm honored they want to work on the show for post-production. So in that sense, it's still like a little bit of guerrilla because it's just me and Michael. Mary Orland, who used to produce a show called In Wine Country in the Bay Area, she helped out on a couple of the episodes, but it's really this grassroots thing this year. I want to see what we're in post-production. So I'm still, I think in my heart, it's the best work of my career. I'm going to see what we get and what we look like once we're done with these post-production of these episodes. And then I'll see how we move forward next year. But,
well, the question was kind of like, there's, if you watch an old movie, for instance, my wife loves, question. Movies like, Breakfast at Tiffany's, stuff like that. And they seem to have a different pace. They seem to have a different sort of angle. And then even in the last 5 years or 4 years, what you've seen with the younger generation and the amount of energy it takes to produce something, and the angle changes, and the first person changes, and all the things that go into producing anything these days, seems to have a different point of view than it did. And I just wonder if that had changed for you, besides the content.
You mean production-wise?
Yeah, production-wise.
Again, no. I don't know. I mean, the crew is...
Well, that's some great questions, huh?
We have better quality people. To me, it's like I'm telling the stories in the best way I know how. And is Michael getting great shots with, he's getting great shots, but there's no thing. It's just we're talking to folks, we're getting the video, we're getting the B-roll, we're telling the story. So and maybe that's something to think about for next year, but that's not been my focus, or even I haven't even thought twice about it.
You mentioned Mary Orland. She had that Wine Country TV show, I think it was, and she actually had a wine club. This is many years ago, and she had a wine club. And I don't know if I was watching the show or I found out that the show was off the air, and I contacted her and I bought her. Oh, that's great! I didn't turn this off. I bought her little wine club list. I think it was like 50 or 60 people or something, and then fast forward, when I started this, she was in the studio, and we did a show together, my older studio, and she got home and she couldn't, and this goes back to what you're doing now. She goes home, she tells her husband, who's in the video audio world,
John Orland, yeah.
And she goes, I just went to the show, and he had no engineers, he had no sound person, he turned on his own camera, he turned off his own camera, he turned on his recorder, he turned off his recorder, and he had produced it all by himself. So then I get a call from her husband saying, I want to write you up in our audiovisual online magazine as this guy with all this equipment who just produces his own shows. I thought, well, that's that back then, maybe this is maybe 5 or 7 years ago, that was probably kind of unique, but I don't think it's so unique anymore. I mean, these days with an iPhone 14, you can,
oh my God, right.
You can produce unbelievable stuff. And anyway,
it's funny because I went to Spain and France with Wines of Grenache maybe a month ago now in September for the harvest there, and I didn't have a production crew, but I had my phone, and I had since I have it all here, I have these little really great high production value microphones,
right,
which I was going to use for this interview, but I couldn't get it together in time because I came back from the gym. If you want to hear about my workout, I used this, clipped it right into my iPhone, and like 2-person interviews.
That's great.
When I was in journalism, we had the big 3/4 inch deck.
Yeah, right.
We carried around, so of course technology changes how we tell stories visually and like with audio change, but I think what makes a good story goes back to the beginning of time, and it's it's about the human condition, it's about people. Storytelling is what it is.
Let's talk about wine just for a minute. We're already at 45 minutes almost.
Oh my God, I'm very long-winded. We haven't said anything about wine.
No, it's great. Well, no, I really wanted to peel back your career and the things that are going on in the industry, so people, because I have a lot of trade listens to this, the consumers listen to this show, so it's very interesting what you're talking about. So, but the wine side, you're traveling the world, you're finding some interesting things. Are you feeling like the consumer is being more adventurous, finding these interesting, like Vernaccia, you just said Vernaccia, that they're responding to these interesting regions and interesting grapes? The
I
general.
think the consumer at this point is so educated. In 5 minutes, we could find out anything we want to know, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're all looking something for unique, something different, something fun. So yeah, I think the consumer is interested. Now, again, I don't work in wine sales. I don't track numbers. I
Right.
don't know. I just know when
Well, you feel it though.
engaging, when I engage with people, their curiosity abound, right? They're so interested in learning or discovering something new. Now that I'm in San Diego, the wine lists are very limited. I was very spoiled being in the Bay Area, right? Where we got to try
Mm-hmm.
all these funky, interesting, cool, cutting edge wines. And here, I'll pull up a list and it's like the same three people or whatever, and so, but it's evolving. I think that I don't know about like age and wine drinking. I don't follow any of these trends,
Sure.
canned wine, millennials, all that, whatever, Gen, whatever. I don't know.
You can
I
count yourself lucky for not having to track that stuff.
I can't, like, I'm just trying to take care of my kids, go to the gym, produce the show, keep my mental health in check, eat growing food and healthy vegetables. Like, I don't know about what the millennials and everybody is up to, but I do believe, like, as a society, we're interested in things that we didn't know we could have access to
Mm-hmm.
before. Like, yeah, they want to learn about, but we are a world connected. We are not separated. So yeah, if I'm people want to talk about wines of Georgia. They want to talk about Croatia. They want to learn about all these different places and try and feel and connect with different cultures. And you can connect through, what you drink, through wine or food. So I think the audience is very interested. Now, for me right now, in terms of content, I'm trying to do things at least this year, because remember, post COVID, I didn't know what was going on. I'm also have to be safe for my family and for myself. We didn't get too crazy. So what I tried to do is give them different experiences that are domestic, right? So, you can go and have these unique experiences, but you're still in, the United States, which is one of
Mm-hmm.
the reasons
Mm-hmm.
why, I'm going to go to Virginia. Not that Virginia is so unique, but it is a different region. And
Yeah,
I'm going to
people
do
don't
an
know.
episode there. I talked to the folks in Idaho. I talked to the folks in Texas, looking for these places, if you're still uncomfortable traveling the world or whatever, that you want to go to and you want to connect with. I mean, there's my goal at one day will be to do an episode in every state, because they make wine in every state. I'm not saying you're going to have, like, there's not Screaming Eagle in every state, but there are stories there to be told. And wine's been around since the beginning of time. So
I think
um,
that's a great idea for one, because post prohibition, the replanting of America started in the South, in Louisiana, and those places with muscaline or one of those grapes, and so there's a lot of history there. Actually, I tried to buy a wine in Kentucky. We were there years ago for the Kentucky Derby. Tasted I don't know if it was Concord, but it was interesting. It was it wasn't Vitis vinifera, but it was an interesting grape. And I thought, okay, it'd be a good thing to show my clients. And when I got back to LA and I called the gentleman up, I said, I need 300 cases of this. He goes, I can't sell that to you. I go, why not? He goes, well, I don't make enough of that, because in Kentucky you can distill all you want. Like, you can distill as much as you need to distill to sell, but you can only ferment so many cases or so many gallons of wine.
interesting. Yeah.
And of course that's the distillation lobby shutting down the
Yeah.
fermentation group, and so he couldn't make enough of this wine to fill the
Huh.
club's needs, which wasn't that much. But you're right. There's something about the wine list right now. You're talking about the wine list in San Diego. The woman I had on the other day, who, like I said, was running the one market list, she was told to cut her list from 1,000 selections, which is a huge list, to 600. But if you think about that, that's 40%, which is a pretty big chunk to take out of your wine list. And I think what's happening, at least in the short term post COVID, restaurants are being very particular and buying close to the bone so they don't get extended like they did when the COVID hit. And they're relying on the big suppliers like Southern, Young's, Wine Warehouse just to procure those lists for them so they don't have to deal with it. So they get to, write one check for all the wines instead of 25 checks if they were out sourcing from small suppliers. It's caused a big problem.
I'm
Small
sure, yeah.
suppliers are being forced out, they're being gobbled up, and all of a sudden the selections of wines, even in LA, it's changing. It's a changing environment, and I hope it starts to rebound. And how old are your twins now?
They just turned 7 in August.
Okay, so they they got a little ways to go, but one of the things we wrestle with, and maybe you have an opinion on this, is this generation. I don't know if it's Z or X or whatever letter it is, but they're drinking stuff like White Claw, right? Which is like horrible.
There's a lot of White Claw
It's
happening down here
phony
in San
flavors.
Diego.
And someday, like you, this moment will occur when they have a real glass of wine and go, wow, now I'm starting to sense what this does to you, to our souls and our bodies and how we feel about life at that moment. Um, I'm hoping that happens soon to some of these generations because we're not seeing it right now. And you said you're not chasing millennials and what they taste. You're lucky because it's
I'm not chasing trends, but I see what people bring to my house. So
yeah.
when I lived in San Francisco, like again, I was in San Francisco, I was in New York. Like it's just like when I moved to Pocatello after living in LA. It's like, okay, I see what's real. So in San Francisco, no, I mean, like that wasn't my experience. But since I moved to San Diego and moms come over or whatever, they're like bringing in a 6-pack of whatever, White Claw, like you go to the thing or whatever. And so I just think it's about accessibility, advertising, and marketing. I think like, oh, this is easy. I just put it in my backpack, and I'm intimidated by wine because if I go, I don't want to bring a glass of wine, and then, oh, this person it might not be good enough. I don't know how to pick. I'm intimidated, and so maybe they just grab whatever's sort of easy and you consume it. But getting back to your point about wine being a natural product, I mean, we started off the interview talking about our workout routines and going to the gym and sort of this sort of healthy lifestyle and walking on the beach every day. And I'm not saying alcohol is healthy. I would never ever say that. But what I am saying is there's something unique about a natural product that comes from the earth. When my daughters are eating food, they ask me, does this come from the earth? And when we're having the food, and I'll say yes or no. They go, because if it comes from the earth, I know it's good for me. And so when I think about wine, I always looked at these little kids, it's like, yeah, it's a natural product. Like, so it's been around since the beginning of time. Like it's in it's like in our religious ceremonies. It is a part of us, ingrained as a culture. Again, take the alcohol part of it out of it, just talk about it as this natural product in the sense that it's been with us and it comes from the earth. So no, when it's the same reason why I don't drink soda. I don't drink soda. We don't have soda in my house. I don't drink like that's an unnatural product. So I think that in terms, if you're talking about the generations of millennial, I don't know what number we're on, X millennial, whatever, Y, I don't know.
I don't either.
They are very conscious of the earth. They are very conscious of the environment. They are very conscious of their whole like sense of being and self and like health. They want to drink natural wine or whatever these terms are. I don't know. But so in that sense, if you pivot wine as and marketing people as more in line with their values, then of course they're going to pivot to it. But right now the White Claw, which is not they're not going to probably drink a Coca-Cola. The people that you're suggesting are drinking White Claw. Then why are they going to drink that? If we're going for natural. So it's an interesting marketing. I don't work in that world, but I think it has to do with they've done a better job of marketing. So let me just put it like that. And then maybe some of the, old wine, big wine names.
Well, there's no question about that. And, the wine industry has that to learn. I have my pet peeves are these chain store items like Apothic Red and Josh and those things that people go back to, but I shouldn't have a problem with those things because those sometimes are entry-level wines. The person that is drinking White Claw today may start with 19 Crimes tomorrow, and that moves them into something more interesting eventually and watching your show or doing whatever. So it's an important part of our business.
But 19 Crimes, take them as an example, right? 19 Crimes, don't you remember what they did with their label? And then
right. It's augmented reality. Yeah.
Like, this is genius. This is like when you see what they're doing, the way they're innovating, the way they're trying to connect with their audience. Like, I think a lot of times in the wine community, we want to talk over people. We don't want to hear them. We don't want to see them. Like, they're saying, I see you. Look, that was a cool thing they did.
Yeah.
So they connected with their audience. They connected with their consumer. And then they created brand loyalty. So I don't hate the player. Like I'm just like, get me in the game. Like, let me do that. Like they're obviously got it figured out. Like I bought my first wine I used to drink that Strawberry Hill. And after that, I graduated to Cooks. And let me tell you something about Boone's Farm, like Night Train, you name
Well,
it,
you're like my dad's liquor store's favorite customer.
like $2, like great. Again, we got
That's
to
so
start
funny.
somewhere. I have no
You're right.
problem
You're right.
with grocery store wines. I mean, meaning like that's where they can get it. So I do have a problem with, the accessibility, like the small, like little family mom and pops not being able to have the access because of the system and the way, obviously the rules and the regulations and who owns, all of it. But there's the direct to consumer now, as you know, which is a big way for
That,
small guys to get
As
ahead.
we'd go on forever. We're already almost at an hour, but it's certainly
You didn't know I was going to talk so much.
the
Look,
DTC
Paul.
market is a very important market for all wineries that are doing this.
Yeah.
And I had this question I asked wineries sometimes, and it's totally altruistic. It'll never happen, of course. And if like and wine is so important to our lifestyle, between you and me and many, 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 many people, a good glass of wine. That what would happen in this industry if profit was totally off the table for wine? Like, in other words, there's a whole segment, there was a product out there, call it wine, that the government said, you don't have to make a product. We just want you to produce the best that you can produce and present to the people. And it'd be a different product. We wouldn't have augmented reality on 19 crimes. My comment is the only crime is they put it in the bottle. So but it's a total altruistic,
Yeah.
hypothetical situation. All right, we're gonna wrap this up because you were talking about wine being healthy, and yes, we were talking about working out. And the funny thing is, when I'm done with a hot yoga class, it's the last thing I feel like, and it's so interesting to me that the body reacts that way. Because I come home, I take my shower, and I'm ready to sit down. My wife says, like a glass of wine, and I don't feel like it when I'm done with that. It's like your body's
No.
rejecting the alcohol for some reason. It's kind of interesting.
And first of all, I don't think I said wine was healthy.
No, no. Well,
I just want to be clear.
I'm going to
Natural.
show you something right now. I'm gonna
Okay,
ask you a
show
question.
me. Okay.
So, well, you already know that in 1990, when Morley Safer released 60 Minutes, that red wine sales went through the roof because of its protective coronary protection with quercetin and resveratrol. But this book, and I'm going to ask you a question from this book. It's called Wine is the Best Medicine. Is that a PhD? It's a medical doctor from France who wrote the book in the 70s. He was also a homeopathic doctor, so he worked on both sides of the fence there. And he wrote this whole book on human maladies and the different types of wines that could help the symptoms of those maladies. I'm not sure he calls them cure. He calls it in vino curitas. And on the back is sort of a synopsis of the whole book. But he's got stuff in here like flatulence and all kinds of interesting things.
Oh, does wine help with flatulence?
It does, yes. I can explain. That could have been the question, but I decided to spare you that answer. So let's just say I'm going to give you a malady. Now, no pressure here. It's about most people don't get it right. And I usually softballs like a champagne maker. I'll give them the answer would be the champagne. So I can't do that with you. So I'm going to give you a malady, and I'm going to give you 3 different French wines that might help you with the symptoms of this. So let's go with rheumatism. I've never asked this one. So if you had
I don't even know what rheumatism is. Can we be clear?
it's what's the bone thing, when you
like rheumatoid arthritis?
Yes, arthritis. Yeah,
oh, okay, arthritis. Okay.
So you could have a Saint-Emilion, champagne, or a Côte de Beaune to help
Me?
you. Yeah.
Do I get to pick?
You got to pick one of these.
I mean, a champagne. It's all I drink 24/7, so I have to pick champagne.
But there's you're not giving me any medical reason as to why you would pick champagne. You just
medical reason. No, let me give you one. I didn't understand the question. Why would I pick champagne to help with rheumatoid arthritis? Well, to be honest, I don't know anything about rheumatoid arthritis, but let's say you have inflation. Not inflation. We definitely have that. Let's say you have inflammation in your joints and in your knees. And I think when you have a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety, that tends to inflame you more. And then therefore your knees might hurt, your body might hurt. But when you have a glass of champagne, it's just really just going to let the stress fall down, your body's going to be more relaxed, and therefore it's going to help with rheumatoid
Well,
arthritis. Is this a game show? What's the
yeah.
answer?
Well, since you studied under the court of sommeliers, you know that getting the answer right or wrong is almost as I'm sorry. Explaining why you chose an answer is almost as important as whether you got it right or wrong. And so you got it right. Of course, you got it right because you only drink champagne. The
I
reason it's
drink
right,
everything.
according to this book, the reason it's right is because of the sulfur content of champagne is a detoxifying agent. It acts in the capillary actions, and they're rich in sulfur and mineral elements. So that's their argument. So then the question is, what's the dose?
Oh, well, at least
Like you have to prescribe
a
a dose,
bottle.
huh? A bottle?
A bottle of champagne a day keeps a coupe of champagne a day keeps the no. I
Keeps the
mean, we're
rheumatism
being
away.
funny, obviously, but the reason why I pick champagne also is because it's usually relatively low alcohol content. It's lighter. It's
Yeah, that's
I
true.
mean, it's sort of an easier drink some in a lot of ways. So that's also why I picked it.
Well, the dosage is 2 glasses a meal, so that would be 6 glasses, which would be a bottle. So that's you're right about
Oh my
that.
gosh, did I write this book?
This is great. So I love doing this with particularly French winemakers because they all take a picture and they go home to France and they try to find a copy in French. It's been such
That is
a
hilarious.
wonderful pleasure and exciting and energizing conversation, Monique. I hope we can do it again.
I would love it. What an honor. And like, I love it when someone just lets me talk because I'm home alone with children all day. So you want to talk for another hour, Paul?
We'll do it again.
I'm kidding. Thank you so much for having me on. This was a lot of fun. I'm very grateful.
And good luck out there with the new show, and we'll be sure to tune in.
Awesome. Thanks so
Well,
much.
where can we go? You have MoniqueSoltani.com. Is that the way your
Yeah.
site is?
Yeah. And you can also just get anything on wino.tv. So
Yeah,
WINEOH.tv. And all my Instagram, all the handles are WINO.TV with an H. So yeah, you can find me there.
We'll look forward to seeing you digitally, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.